Hey, what's up you guys, and welcome back to Movies and a Mug, a little show where I sit down every movie Monday and we talk about a movie whilst doing a mug. So last week we watched a movie that truly defines red flags in dating relationships, Twilight. So I didn't really enjoy watching the movie, but I did enjoy talking about it, and I really enjoyed editing that one. Like, I think that's probably one of the funniest videos that I've done, mostly because I just think Twilight is so campy, and I've come to the conclusion that ragging on Twilight is just infinitely more amusing than actually watching it. But I will say that I did find that Twilight still has a very active community, which really surprised me. Like, I don't know why, I just kind of thought it had had its time in the sun and maybe moved, you know, into the recesses of people's brains and wasn't so much in the forefront of popular media anymore. But honestly, when I went looking, I found very active Twilight communities. Like, people still love these books and love these movies, and I love that for them. I think that's so cute. Like, I really enjoy it when people like stuff and are really passionate about it, even if it's kind of bad, you know? And to be honest, that's kind of my whole thing. Like, I really enjoy watching terrible, terrible movies because I find them amusing. So when there is, you know, a big community of people who enjoy a terrible thing, like, I'm all for it. So even though I thought the movie was pretty bad, I thought that was nice. This week, we're doing Slither. Now, full disclosure, Slither is a movie that I had not seen until about a week and a half ago when I was recommended a video on YouTube. And the video was just a small clip from the movie, but I found this clip so hilarious. It was so funny to me. So obviously I had to go out, find the movie, and watch it straight away.
Do you mind handing me a piece of that possum over there?
And when I did, it immediately shot to the top of the list of movies that I had to review because this movie is hilarious, but oh my god, it is so fucking weird. This is a very, very strange movie. I think the primary reason that I had never heard of this movie is because I don't like gross stuff. I don't like goo. I don't like pustules. I don't like things that pop. I just don't like it. And if I'm being perfectly honest, the thing I hate the most, and I mean like the thing I have an actual aversion to, it makes me feel kinda sick, is excessive amounts of fat. I don't go twisting what I'm saying. Don't go down in the comments being like, that's not funny, no bitch, I'm talking about like 700 pounds worth of fat, that type of stuff. I'm talking Jabba the Hutt. I'm talking the Harkonnens from Dune. Oh my god. If you've ever read Dune, or, you know, it was kind of in the recent movie, but I don't think he was as fat in the recent movie, so it didn't really set me off. But in the books, there's one point where Baron Harkonnen is described as this like huge, like 700-pound blob of fat who has these grabby little baby hands that like grab for food. No, actually makes me feel sick. Just thinking about it. And this movie has all of those things. It has every single thing I've just mentioned. So, you know, in theory, I should hate this movie. But when I watched it, I found it so fucking funny and so stupid and so just like witty that it just overrode all of my like fight or flight responses to these things. And then I found out that the director was James Gunn, and I was immediately just like, oh, okay. So most of you probably know James Gunn for Guardians of the Galaxy, but if you've watched any of his films, you know that he has a very distinct kind of style, and that's primarily because of the way he handles dialogue. Like, the dialogue in this movie is legitimately hilarious. With that said, however, James Gunn is a person that I have kind of just, I don't know her. For many years in James Gunn's career, he was the walking embodiment of the worst parts of every douche that goes to film school. He was like every goddamn annoying edgelord with a Twitter account, just tweeting whatever the fuck he wanted and just kind of getting away with it. Call me a prude, but I don't think that joking about fucking kids on Twitter is really what I want from my movie director. But in recent years, he seems to have grown out of it, probably in large part due to several ironclad contracts with Disney, which probably means that every single thing he tweets now is vetted by like 11,000 people before some intern hits send. The whole film is very James Gunnian, and it is very, very camp. So, with all that said, with all that out of the way, sit down and shut up. Wow, that was shut up, okay? Sit down and shut up. Sorry, I don't know why that sounded so mean. Nothing that I say from this point onwards is really gonna make any sense. Like, this movie is a trip, so just sit back and just enjoy the experience. Like, just come on this ride with me. Just come on this ride with me, okay? So, the movie starts with an asteroid that is plummeting to Earth and lands in the middle of a small town field in Middle America. Actually, I think the South of America would be, you know, more accurate. I don't think the movie ever explicitly states where it's set, but it's, you know, it's kind of big hillbilly energy. So the asteroid lands about, I don't know, like 100 feet away from this police patrol car where the town sheriff named Bill and one of his deputies are just taking a nap in the car because, you know, taxpayer money at work, I guess. The scene then changes and we cut to the next day and a high school class, which is being taught by a woman named Starla, who's played by Elizabeth Banks, and she is giving a lecture on survival of the fittest, which is not at all foreshadowing. And so after the class ends, Starla is picked up from work by her husband, whose name is Grant Grant. First name Grant, last name Grant. Grant Grant. Grant Grant. He's played by Michael Rooker, and straight away they make a point to kind of highlight how mismatched this couple are. Bill is outside the school and he's having a conversation with one of his deputies, and it's made very apparent that Starla married Grant because he was wealthy, because Starla came from a very poor family, he's a lot older than she is. I don't know if this is a controversial take, but I do not find Michael Rooker to be particularly unattractive. He's no Matt Damon. Matt Damon. And I wouldn't even say that they're particularly mismatched, at least no more so than any other Hollywood couple. Like, look at King of Queens. You've got us believing that Leah Remini is in a relationship with this guy. Okay. Let me know in the comments below. Do you like bald guys? Do you find him attractive? Let me know. But during this conversation that Bill is having with his female deputy, he makes a point of noting that if Grant had a gina, that this female co-worker would also have married him, giving us, you know, confirmation that this lady is a lesbian. But we're only at the 5-minute mark, and this is already the second gay joke we've had in this movie. And I really, really, really wanted to highlight this one because it made me cackle. A child overhears the conversation where he's like, well, if he had a gina, you'd have married him too. And the child asks, what's a gina? The reply from Bill is...
It's a country, you know, where Chinese people come from.
I don't know what it is about that sentence, but it hit me right in the giggle dick, bitch. Okay, so that night, Grant makes it clear that he's looking for a little slap and tickle with his wife. You know, he wants some adult time, but Starla just really isn't feeling it. She is just not in the mood. She tells Grant to just, you know, go work one out for himself, which harsh, but you know, sometimes he's just not in the mood. Grant gets upset because apparently this is an ongoing issue in their relationship, grabs his shit, and he leaves. Grant then goes to a bar. Grant gets approached by a woman named Brenda, and Brenda wants to fuck. And apparently, Grant used to date Brenda's sister back in the day before he married Starla. And Brenda just comes right out and says, I never knew why you wanted to date my sister because she's a fat cow. I mean, some people have complicated relationships with their family, but, that's a little rude. Disrespect. disrespectful. So Brenda takes Grant out into the woods and she shows him where she carved their initials into a tree when they were younger. And then they start making out, but Grant stops because he's like, no, I can't do this. I'm a married man. Like, this is wrong. Like, you're cute and everything, but I have Miss Goodpuss at home, so I'm gonna leave. Thanks. But whilst he's leaving, Grant comes across like the meteor thing that fell from the sky. And then he sees a trail that's like leading away from it, which he follows. And, okay, here we go. How am I gonna do this? All right. The mollusk thing has lips. Let's just say that. It's got lips. When Grant pokes the lips with his stick, a little nubbin pops out.
Come on. Wait.
Good God, the makers of this film knew what they were doing, okay? They knew exactly what they were doing with this. And then the nubbin, for lack of a better word, just kind of like fires out a dart, like, which penetrates Grant. And something kind of burrows inside of him. And then we get like an exoskeleton shot of this thing kind of worming its way up to Grant's brain. And this in turn causes Grant to like wander off in a dazed and kind of confused state, but also causes him to crave meat. So Grant just kind of leaves Brenda in the woods and wanders off home. And then we cut to the next morning where Grant is back at his house and he's having a conversation with Starla where she's apologizing, you know, for not being very physically attentive lately, I guess. And this whole kind of exchange seems to really confuse Grant now. He doesn't really know kind of how to interact with Starla properly. I guess it's probably because of the parasite that just burrowed its way into his brain, but okay. And so as a result of this, he starts crying, and this for some reason turns Starla on. Like, as soon as he starts crying, Starla's like, I can use that as lube. So the two start having a bit of slap and tickle, but obviously when Grant takes off his shirt, Starla sees the penetration mark from the mollusk worm thingy, but Grant just waves it off as a bug bite and they smash. And in the next scene, Grant continues to really crave meat. Like, he really, really, really wants to eat meat. So much so that he rearranges his basement to be like a meat den. He's got plastic sheets hanging everywhere, and he's just kind of got raw meat lying around, puts a padlock on it so Starla can't go in there. But the parasite that's inside Grant just keeps on getting hungrier and hungrier and hungrier. And it's also causing Grant to like deteriorate, like it's causing his skin to fester. And then the movie shows us a dog, and if you know anything about movies, every time they show a dog, that dog is gonna die. And then Grant eats the dog, and it's only gonna get worse from here. So Grant and Starla are supposed to be going to an event, and Starla's getting ready for it, but the parasite inside of Grant is just getting hungrier. Since the parasite got a little taste of Starla when they had a little session, it wants more. And so when Starla's back is turned, these very phallic tendrils protrude out of Grant's chest and kind of worm their way towards Starla. But Grant manages to, you know, rein them in and tell Starla that he'll just meet her later at the party. She should go without him. Cut to the party, and it's like a deer hunting party where like a bunch of people show up and celebrate hunting deer, which, I mean, isn't my kind of party, but go ham, I guess. So while Starla's at the event, Grant goes to visit Brenda, the woman that, you know, he was in the woods with the night before. And she's at home with her baby. And so when Grant kind of comes a knocking, she's surprised to see him because, you know, he got like chest pierced. Kind of thought maybe you died. But Grant says that he's not dead. And then he asks if the old half Mexican is around. And I guess that refers to Brenda's husband, but I don't know why I found that to be a weird statement, so I just wanted to add it in. Seems disrespectful. But anyway, Grant makes it clear that he wants to pick up where they left off the night before, you know, smashing boots, more slap and tickle. And then he rips open his shirt and reveals the weird chest, penis, tentacle things, which immediately just go after Brenda. And then the tentacles just start, like, pumping something into her. I'm gonna go in town, but I'll probably just drink it down. Ew. Okay, so later that night, Starla goes home and she sees Grant, and his face is fucked the fuck up. Like, his face is cracked. And we then see Grant taking a load of meat out into the woods, and we see a chained up Brenda who is complaining that she feels so hungry that she thinks she's gonna die. Grant then tells her not to worry because he brought her some munchies, and no. N-O-P-E, no way. He just flops out a load of raw meat, and that is disgusting. I mentioned at the beginning that I have this weird thing about, like, excess amounts of fat, but I also do not like the texture of raw meat. Like, I can cook and do all that kind of stuff, but the idea of eating raw meat, to me, that's nasty. That's kind of gross. Like, a mate of mine had an ex who was really into, like, food in the bedroom. Like, apparently it's called sploshing, and you, like, rub food on each other, like, you roll around in cakes and stuff, and no. I'm just imagining, like, a guy coming to me and being like, hey, so I have this fetish. It just really turns me on. It just really gets my gears going. Oh, okay, yeah. I mean, like, look, I'm pretty open to trying most things. Like, what is it? Is it feet? No. Do you want me to, like, pee on you or something? No. Okay. Public stuff. Dress up as Elizabeth I and get pelted with water balloons. Fisting. Like, what is it? What are you into? I want to watch you roll around in a tub of spaghetti. Get out. Okay, so Starla's at home, and then Bill shows up in his police car, and he's like, hey, we're looking for Grant because Brenda has gone missing, and Grant is the last person that was seen with her. So Starla's pretty shocked by this, and so to get more information about what may be going on, she breaks into that, you know, secret room that Grant had set up, you know, the one with all the meat in it. And as soon as she goes in there, it's just like wall-to-wall dead shit. Like, there are dead coyotes in there are dead dogs, there are dead deer. It is just like floor-to-wall dead shit. And how she didn't smell that when the only thing separating her from a rotting meat locker is like 3 inches of drywall, I have no idea, but, you know, she's pretty, I guess. So Starla gets on the phone to Bill, and she's like, Bill, you need to get your ass back here, like, right now. There's some freaky shit going on. But then Grant shows up, and he overhears what Starla's doing, and he is pissed. So he grabs Starla and then tries to, like, tentacle her, you know, for betraying him and calling Bill. Then he starts to choke her, but then Bill shows up and he's like, Grant, get away from Starla. But as he's choking her, his limbs and his arm starts, like, turning into jelly. It starts, like, dislocating and, like, flopping out. So Grant is on the loose and everybody's looking for him because he looks like a giant squid man with, like, decomposing flesh and these, like, floppy arms. Oh, and also, like, he kidnapped a woman. So there's also that. It also turns out that Grant has been stealing cattle, which allows Bill and his team to kind of plot Grant's movements. And this scene really fucked me up because you've got all these police people and they're talking about, like, this squid monster that's, like, on the loose, that's killing cattle, and he's done all this work to track it. And it's just like 3 plots of land that are all next to each other. And they've got like stamped squids on them so you can tell where he's been. And it's like, oh fuck. It took you more time to commission a stamp with a squid on it than to do this investigation. Girl, he went from A to B to C. He went from number 1 to number 2 to number 3, all in a straight line. And you have all these people sat there like, tracking. So the guys all grab their guns and they're gonna go hunting some squid. We then cut to the family who own the farm that they're doing the stakeout at. And you know, they're all very happy. They're an all-American family. They've got 3 daughters. It's very apparent immediately that they're all gonna die. You know, like standard movie stuff. I also wanted to point out that during the stakeout, one of the guys asks Bill if he's like in a relationship with the lesbian deputy from earlier in the movie. And Bill just replies that she packs a box lunch. I found that really funny as well. Okay, so that night, they're all there, they're at the stakeout, and then Grant shows up. And he's just fully a squid at this point. He is a full squid man with like gross hair sticking out of him and teeth going all the way up his face. Like he's not bipedal anymore. He's like moving around on his belly.
Grant!
And so Grant slithers up to this cow and then just like tentacle chops the cow in half. And then he's gonna drag the cow back to his lair or whatever. But then Starla sees him and she's like, hey, I know that you've turned into this disgusting tentacle monster, but you're just a little bit sick and I'm gonna stand by you and we're gonna make all of this okay. And I'm like, girl, that's a no from me. That is a hard pass. Like, I don't care how much I like you. If you turn into a squid, I just don't think there's anything I can do with that. Oh, well, I guess the tentacles might be kind of... No, there's nothing I can do with that. Especially if you look like this. Like this? No. Anyway, Grant chops one of the police guys that are there, just like clean in half. But then Grant just kind of like scuttles away and they all chase him to a barn. So they go into this barn and there they find Magda. And oh my fucking God, this scene is... So this was the scene that was recommended to me on YouTube. So Magda is now just like a horrifying ball of writhing flesh. She has these little, these little hands that stick out of the side. And Magda's just like, something's wrong with me. I'm so hungry. Could you pass me a bit of that possum over there? And the camera like pans to this dead possum. And then she's like, just a little bit of possum. Obviously it's gross, but the way that she delivers her lines is so fucking funny. There's just this like Pearl from Blade, ex Jabba the Hutt, ex Tammy from 700 Pound Sisters, all merged into one, begging for possum, and there's just something about it. This is so fucking stupid. But then the ball of flesh starts like pulsating. Immediately I was like, oh, this bitch is about to pop. You just know she's about to burst. And then all of a sudden she literally rips at the seams. Just like a party balloon, bitch, she pops the fuck open. And then from inside of her, all of these like gross looking little worm things that, you know, for ease, I'm just gonna call them slithers, spew everywhere. And the slithers jump into people's mouths. The first place they try to go is right down your throat. So there are all these officers there who are just getting slithered in the mouth. Remember I told you earlier on that the people who wrote this movie knew exactly what they were doing? Yeah, it's happening again. So the Slithers slither over to the farmhouse, and there we see the teenage daughter of the family that lives there taking a bath. And we see one of the Slithers come in through the window, and it crawls across the floor and then up the side of the bath. And then we get this kind of like traveling shot of the Slither swimming up to the teenage daughter in the bath, and her legs are kind of like this. So you're immediately like, oh my god, no, she's gonna get slithered in the pussy. Oh my god, no, 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 no! But it doesn't, because it looks like the Slithers can only enter you through your mouth. Because, again, the Slither tries to, let's just say, orally enter her. And at this point, if I haven't made it very, very clear, there is a lot of phallic imagery with all of the Slithers. And it kind of lends, like, a disturbing quality to the film, because you're watching these people have these like 6-inch phallic things just stuck out of their mouth, like wiggling around. And obviously it's like distressing, but like their eyes are rolling back in their head and they're like, you know, like choking on it. And when I first watched it, I didn't know how to react. Like, I had a very uncomfortable reaction because I found it funny, but at the same time, it is very disturbing. So you kind of have this weird, like, ew, it's gross, but at the same time, you know, it's kind of funny. And I guess I'm still in that space. But anyway, whilst the Slither is in the daughter's mouth, she gets a vision of where the Slither came from. She gets like the Slither's origin story, like fed directly through her mouth. Okay, so it turns out that the Slither is from outer space and that the Slither's nature is to just devour. It enters a new planet, kills you for food, or it impregnates you with more Slithers, or it like assimilates you into a planet-wide writhing mass of flesh. So the daughter manages to kill the Slither with like a curling iron, and she escapes through a window and like locks herself in a car. But then we cut back to Bill and the guys and we find out that another one of the Slither's powers is that once the Slither is inside you, you just become part of like a hive mind. And you also kind of like turn into a zombie. So obviously everyone's doing the ooh, ah, but they're also just constantly shouting the word Starla just over and over and over again. Starla, ooh, ah, Starla. Okay, so Bill makes his way over to the farmhouse and he ends up saving the daughter. And then just a little bit later, the daughter, Starla, and Bill are all in a car. And we find out that also anyone who's been infected by a Slither can spit acid at you. Just, you know, just because. But the daughter explains to Bill and Starla, you know, what she saw in her vision. So she is just explaining what the Slithers are and that they're a hive mind. So that if you kill the main Slither, the hope is that the rest of the Slithers will go with him. So, okay. It's time to stab Caesar. But then suddenly, one of the Slither zombies that is driving a car, like just rams straight into Bill, Starla, and the daughter. And then the zombies carry Starla away. So Starla's been kidnapped and she wakes up, she's in her house, and she hears all of these zombie voices just calling her name. And so she grabs like a pointy hairbrush from the side of her bed and like tucks it into her underwear. We then get a shot of a tentacle like turning on a radio and playing Every Woman in the World to Me. 'Cause you're every woman in the world to me. That one. And there's like collages of Starla everywhere, all around the house, just photos and photos of her. And I'm like, how did the squid use glue? Or maybe did it use some of its own slime? Because this squid is now slimy. So Starla goes and she sees Grant and he is just expanding, like he's growing. He's like encompassing other things and objects and people and stuff. And it's basically just like a fleshy, writhing mess. Like, it cuts to outside and we see people just like joining this weird flesh orgy, all of which are a part of Grant. I have said it before, and I will say it again. This movie is nasty. Right, so Starla goes over to Grant, and Grant is kind of angry because he thinks that Starla doesn't love him anymore. Because he's, you know, a giant tentacle squid monster who kidnaps people and then impregnates them with his slithers and then causes them to explode and then has turned everyone into a zombie and a writhing pile of fleshy goo. I could see how he'd get there. But Starla's just like, look, this is gonna take me some time to get used to. You know, I'm just gonna need to adjust to all of these changes. And that, you know, she made a vow to be with him for better or for worse, and she is going to honor that vow. And she knows that Grant really is still in there somewhere, and that he really loves her and would never try to hurt her. And so she walks over to him to, you know, give him a kiss on his gross, wet, hairy, slimy face. She pulls the pointy hairbrush out of her underwear and stabs him in the neck with it. But obviously it doesn't kill the monster and it just yeets her across the room. Meanwhile, Bill has arrived and he storms in to try and save Starla, but he just gets yeeted out a window. Okay, but then Grant starts trying to kill him and he impales him with one of his tentacles. But then Bill finds a really conveniently placed gas canister, and when another tentacle tries to impale Bill, he like puts the end of the tentacle into the gas canister so that all of the gas gets reverse pushed into Grant through his tentacle. And then Bill tells Starla to shoot Grant, so she does, and then he just explodes in a fiery, gooey ball of mess. And then, because as I've been saying all along, the writers of this movie really knew what they were doing and were trying to drive home a theme. When Bill pulls out the tentacle that was stuck inside of him, it oozes white liquid, which was just squid cum, okay? It was squid cum. I have never been so turned off in my entire life. And that's the end of the movie. That's pretty much it. So Bill, Starla, and the daughter from the farmhouse all survived, and then they just kind of walk outside, and literally everybody else in the town is just lying dead. There are just dead bodies everywhere, and they're like, all right, go team. Okay, so that's it. That was Slither. I told you it was a wild ride. All right, let's have some final thoughts. Very clearly, this movie is kind of gross. There are writhing, fleshy masses of pustule-filled squid monsters that are far too close to an orgy for my liking. And, of course, there is a lot of dead animals in this. Like, the movie does not shy away from showing just, like, decomposing flesh a lot of the time. Despite the fact that I genuinely usually just don't like that kind of stuff, this movie just really, really did something for me, and I don't know why. Please go and watch Slither after this if you haven't already, because it is somehow just a very charming movie. You also feel for Grant, like, he didn't want to be a squid monster, it just kind of happened to him, and he really did love Starla. Like, even when this parasite took him over and, you know, turned him into this disgusting, hideous creature, the one thing that he kind of held true to is that he really loved his wife. And I don't know, I found that kind of sweet. The monster is kind of relatable and not in like an annoying way, you know, not in like a Disney remake kind of way where they're trying to make the evil stepmother have a relatable backstory. Like Grant just is kind of a nice guy that got attacked by a shitty parasite that turned him into a demon creature. And you know, I have dated a lot of dudes and none of them, apart from one, cared for me in the same way that he cared for Starla. So you know what? I'm not mad at it, okay? Alright guys, that is it from me. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you liked this look. If you did, make sure to leave a comment down below, and also let me know what movie you would like me to review next. I'm undecided about what we're doing next week, so I'm open to suggestions. I hope you all stay safe, and as always, kisses from England. Bye guys!